the fixed capitalism for communities came from the fact that most people, when you say capitalism, or a lot of people will view that as a negative word. Everybody's got a different context around it. I view it as a complicated word because capitalism without checks and balances will almost like eat itself alive. It'll destroy itself and everything around it. But within check with proper boundaries, it will actually be one of the most, like it's the fastest way to exponentially grow something. So the word itself just means like exponential growth over time, in my opinion. So when thinking about fixing capitalism for communities, I think about access. Who has access to participate? Well, everybody has access to be an employee most of the time. Everybody has access to build a company sometimes. Everybody has access to be an investor, not until 2016. So when looking at fixing capitalism for communities, I was looking at it from a founder lens to let founders know that, you know, basically anybody can help your company grow and they can also put capital into it. And what happens when not just, you know, roughly 8% of our population has access to invest in early stage companies, but the whole population, what does that do to society? So to make that make more sense, would it shock you to know that since the 1930s when the stock market collapsed until 2016, you could go dump money into a lottery ticket. You could go blow your entire life savings on black in Vegas. You could trade more money in the stock market than you had by buying on margin. But God forbid you go throw $100 in your local startup coffee shop, you name it. It's illegal, it's too risky. Those were the laws since 1930 to 2016. So our whole socioeconomic framework has been based on laws that got set up after the stock market collapse and said if you're not wealthy, it's too risky, you cannot invest in your backyard.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that was fascinating to me too. When I first learned it, I was like, what is this world?
So to really put it in perspective, I mean, you just 1930 to 2016, that's almost, what, 80 90 years?
Yeah.
So this is just recently in the past 4 years that this has kind of opened up a whole new sector, a whole new opportunity for investors is what you're saying.
Yeah, most people think of, let's put another psychological bent on it. Like the current, I don't know what you guys view about housing, but a lot of people until recently viewed having their house was their financial asset to retire on. Well, if you're in a market where all the houses are moving at the same rate, and then you've got to sell your house to then go live, there's no margin for that person in their house. So there is no upside for them. So we live in a system that's been incredibly unlevel, not due to like people trying to denude other people or push them down society, but simply because we had laws in place as a country that created a caste system that said, no, you're not smart enough to get educated on stuff. We're going to lock you out because it's too risky to invest in your backyard unless you're wealthy. So I think about that as not only as an investor, not only as somebody who helps founders grow and scale, but as a person who's a father, a person who cares about people in his backyard. I'm like, wait a minute. Investing has very little to do with financial acumen and has very much to do with like know-how, being cognizant of how you help something in your backyard grow. I found most of the time that that's what makes or breaks a company. So like all the rules that we put in place to protect people were mainly around like legal agreements could screw people, which is why it was risky because you got to know all the terms and stuff. All that in 2016 and even more so now kind of got standardized. So you're on an equity path, you know, you're going this way. If you're on a revenue share path, you're getting paid on top line revenue that the company produces. If you're a real estate investor, do you have enough leases to cover all your, cost of the thing, and can you sell it for more than you bought it for? So it's become a lot more simplified in the market. But that ability to teach my children through their ability to interact with other founders and place dollars on those founders and learn from them is probably what's been the most, that's what undergirds those words, fixing capitalism for communities. If you really want to learn something, you got to go put money on it. I'm not saying people should invest, but we invest in other ways. I mean, I put $10,000 into going to college.
And even time is an investment, I would argue, too. That's the biggest investment, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it was just recently come up in the pandemic. I mean, there's a whole joke on, I can't remember the show, but the guy's like, there's all these colleges that are up for, charging all this money for people to go to college and people can't get jobs afterwards. Wow, they could have just taken like $40,000 and gone and diversified like a VC across 40 companies, and they might have hit one that gets them 400,000. Like, might have also all gone to zero. But my personal philosophy on what investing means, quote unquote, has completely changed, because investing to me is just I'm putting time, effort, money into something that I think can have some type of return. That can have financial implications, that can have socioeconomic implications. But at the end of the day, if I'm investing in something, I'm putting money, time, energy, effort into something that has some type of return. So then the question becomes, as an individual, as a family, what do I want that to be, and who should regulate that? That question, just because we segmented who could invest in startups, has been locked out of most of society. Because our whole educational system is go to school to learn how to get a skill set to do something for somebody else.
For your whole life.
For your whole life. Which may not be bad. I mean, a lot of people need that type of security. And they can do whatever they do with money they make beyond what they need to spend as a family. And that's good for most of America. But the fact that we lock people out intentionally was a good concept in the 30s, maybe a good concept through the 80s, but then you saw the wealth gap start to expand again as all these technology companies and technology started to rise and people can't keep up. Well, what's the quickest way for them to learn? I guarantee if somebody dumps money into a company and they lose money, they're going to have two reactions. They're either going to like never do it again because they lost money and they don't like being burned by losing money. Or they're going to dig in and figure out, why did I lose money? I thought I was going to make money. They learn from it. They might do another one to keep learning. They keep learning. They actually end up learning more about industry than you'll ever learn in school. From simple small dollars they're in companies. That's what I've personally learned. Should people do that? I don't know. That's up for them to decide. But that's the optionality that people have now that they didn't know they had. So again, from what I do in my core day-to-day role with Incolo, it is literally helping founders build and grow their companies most of the time, helping them grow sales channels, and then looking at optionality. Like, if you don't have a limitation on who can participate in your company from an investor perspective, we know psychologically if people put money on something, they're more psychologically invested. It's back of mind, front of mind all the time. And we have data now that shows it's going to make your company grow quicker. Who do you want those people to be? Like, literally, it can be anybody. Who do you want it to be if you do that? And that's the question that founders unpack with their teams. And they say, wow, we had all these people we had to reject just because they don't have $1 million in net assets or don't make $300,000 or more as a family. But they can pour money into our company. They got a network of 10,000 people they can help us tap into. Like, why would we not take their money? So, I mean, that's the shifting world that's occurring in society right now that most people don't see coming.